That helped me actually open my heart just a little bit, to the possibility that, God loves me and that he actually wants to know, well, he already knows me, but there's a chance for me to know him. I remember on the first day, I was actually quite quiet. I didn't want to impose any sort of question. I was actually quite nervous and just listening. I think that was the biggest thing that I wanted to do. It's casual. Everybody's really friendly and loving. It's a very safe environment to voice any sort of disagreements you have. When I mean any. You really are made to think for yourself. Because I think a lot of people, they're told what to think, but when you're told, what do you think? Then you suddenly have to think. At some point, it became the best, the day that I look forward to most during my week.
It'd be great to have you along to our next course. Bring yourself, bring a friend, come make some new friends and be introduced to God. Introducing God is a course that walks through the worldview of the Bible. It's a chance to explore and discuss what it says about life and God and what it means to have a relationship with Him. And it happens in a relaxed and friendly environment. It's for a range of people. If you've never read the Bible, if you've never gone to church, it's for you. If you haven't been to church in years and you're looking to reconnect with your faith, it's for you. If you're wanting to discuss ideas and hear different opinions, or if you just want to sit back and take it in. If you want to consider what it could look like for you to know God, it's for you. For me, introducing God was where the puzzle pieces fell into place. I'd heard about Jesus before and I thought I knew what God was like, but there are a lot of things that didn't make sense to me. I had a lot of questions and ideas that I wanted to explore, and I hadn't quite felt comfortable to do that before. But introducing God allowed me to do that. I wasn't sure what it would be like, so I thought I'll just go along to the first night and check it out. And yeah, I had a really great time. And I kept going back, and bit by bit I came to see more clearly who God is, His purposes for my life, and how I could actually have a relationship with Him.
I was raised Catholic, and at some point I think I had the disposition that just because you go to a garage doesn't mean you're a mechanic. Just like going to church doesn't mean you're a Catholic, or in that case, so I stopped going. But at the same time, when I did go, I didn't really get much out of what the priest was saying, and it just became like white noise to me. God was very distant from where I was. He didn't seem close. I didn't really have a very good picture of who God was. You start to see a really good picture of who He is in the course, just His character and that His faithfulness to His people, which I found really striking. And so that really started to slowly change my heart a little bit.
An Introducing God evening is always really warm and friendly. You can have a glass of wine and relax conversation over dinner. We watch a short video together, and then there's a chance to discuss some of the things it says over dessert and bounce ideas around. No question is off limits. It's an open discussion where you're free to be honest and say what you really think. This happens over a series of 7 or so weeks, and there's time to really dig into ideas and allow for them to simmer and be explored more fully as the weeks go on.
I initially thought I was going to burst up in flames, and I think coming to Introducing God with a healthy level of skepticism, not to the point where you actually can't, accept certain things. That helped me actually open my heart just a little bit, to the possibility that, God loves me and that He actually wants to know, well, He already knows me, but there's a chance for me to know Him. I remember on the first day, I was actually quite quiet. I didn't want to impose any sort of question. I was actually quite nervous and just listening. I think that was the biggest thing that I wanted to do. It's casual. Everybody's really friendly and loving. It's a very safe environment to voice any sort of disagreements you have. When I mean any. You really are made to think for yourself. Because I think a lot of people, they're told what to think, but when you're told, what do you think? Then you suddenly have to think. At some point, it became the best, the day that I look forward to most during my week.
It'd be great to have you along to our next course. Bring yourself, bring a friend, come make some new friends and be introduced to God.
The Pastor's Heart and Dominic Steele, and thanks for joining us this afternoon. Today, online evangelism and social media. And Balogh and Bill Salier are here from the Gospel Coalition Australia. And look, just to be clear, this is the interview that I have least looked forward to doing this year. I love the Gospel Coalition. I'm friends with most of the council members and much of the work they do is brilliant. And so it hurts me to say this afternoon, I think they're making a terrible decision with this new evangelistic campaign that they're promoting. The campaign was originally scheduled for last October, November, and look, disclosure, I was one of the people who was invited to write an endorsement for it. But when I saw it first in October, remember I was sitting on the couch at home with my wife on a Friday night, opened my laptop, read my email, and I said to my wife, oh no, my friends can't be doing something that dumb. And I wrote that night to the Gospel Coalition Council members and ARCOS, pleading with them to stop. I wrote, I'm profoundly disturbed at the TGC Jesus a Hoax promotion. I think it's a major mistake and needs to go back to the drawing board. I'm happy to talk about this. I've only just seen it. I wanted to tell you ASAP. I'm sorry to contact you out of hours. I'm not sure how much the train has left the station, but I think it needs to be called back. I've so much respect for you, and I'm grieved to say I'm profoundly disappointed at this attempt at gospel promotion. My view was, and is, that the campaign has the net effect of being an own goal for the gospel and will do more harm than good. Arcos came to meet me. He did a really good job of listening to my concerns. He was excellent at reflective listening, but the campaign launches this Friday with no revisions. And here it is. Here's the campaign. If you're watching on the video, you'll see it come up on the screen. If you're listening, let's just watch it on the video first.
Jesus of Nazareth is a controversial figure. Is this history's biggest hoax?
So the key advertising tile, small words Jesus, then colon, then the words in large print, history's biggest hoax, and then question mark. And that's the hero line of the campaign. That's the image that they're building the campaign around. Now, call me old-fashioned, but it's the atheists who push that Jesus is a hoax, and it's the Christians who push that Jesus is true. And if I was marketing director for Australian Atheists and looking for a marketing campaign, this is the exact image, exact campaign that I would be pushing out on people's Facebook feeds. So here we have a Christian organisation, the good guys, the best guys, the Gospel Coalition, the leaders of our united evangelical evangelism, all our trust, all our respect, funding a hero line that would work for the atheists. I was going to write an article outlining the emails, outlining the argument that I sent, the conversations, but then I thought they're all friends. I'll invite them in and why don't we sit down and I can tell you why I think you're wrong and you can tell me why I'm wrong. And so Bill Salier, council member of the Gospel Coalition Australia, and Balogh, executive director. Arcos has been on the Pastor's Heart. Bill spoke, at our church in January. And thanks so much for doing me the courtesy of coming in. And I still think Jesus would be best served by your council making a last-minute decision to pull funds. But if you are going to go ahead, I hope people will learn from this discussion. There's two issues, the negative issue and the historicity issue. Maybe we could start with you, Arcos, the negative issue. You reflected listening well to me, but you haven't changed anything. So why am I wrong?
Sure. Thanks so much, Dominic. Firstly, thank you so much for bringing us onto your show. And thanks for playing that as well. If anyone wants to check it out for themselves, just go to the TGC Australia Facebook page and you'll see more details about it. Look, if I could just take a step back and just talk about the genesis of the idea, that might give a bit more context to your listeners.
Sure.
And then I can go into the specific question you'd have asked. Look, the Gospel Coalition Australia, as Dominic just prayed before, is we're very much about evangelism, wanting every man, woman and child in Australia to come to know the Lord Jesus Christ. And so late last year or mid last year, we thought, how can we do it better? How can we do it in a way that encourages Christians to evangelise in one space which we haven't seen too much evangelism, and that's in the online space. And so we thought we hired a content designer, Brianna McLean. She's had industry experience and so forth. And we thought, what could we come up with? We talked to our cousins over at TGC USA. Have they seen what we were thinking about? They said no. We couldn't find anyone else. And so we're going with a video, a short 3-minute video, outlining the historicity of the resurrection. And as Dominic said, it's titled Jesus, History's Biggest Hoax, ? And we think that design and that video will engage people, engage the sceptical non-Christians, engage the non-Christians that perhaps think that Jesus is irrelevant for their life and just put him in the religion box. And so that's one of the reasons why we went with the particular heading we have. Now, interestingly enough, I ran this past a couple of non-Christian friends and I thought, okay, let's see what they've got to say about it. One non-Christian friend that I ran it past, I asked him, what do you think of the heading? Like, unfiltered, just tell me what you think. And his response was he loves the heading. And I asked him, why is that? And he said, because it's not preachy. It actually comes alongside my doubts and looks with me at what the issues are that I'm thinking about. And then it presents the angle from a Christian perspective. And so, obviously, that's anecdotal. But certainly in terms of headlines, question headlines are known to be curiosity arousing. And so that's why we've gone with that.
Mm-hmm. Bill?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't add much more other than once again to say thanks for the opportunity to come. But it's been, I think your feedback has been taken seriously. It's invigorated a vigorous discussion amongst us. I think just to reinforce Arcos's point, it's a question, not a statement.
Yeah, but that gets lost when I'm scrolling through on social media. I mean, whether it's an exclamation mark or whether it's a question mark or whether it's a full stop, when I'm scrolling through on social media, I don't even notice that point. Yeah. I mean, that's the way. Sorry, that is the way Facebook works.
Yeah, sure.
People consume Facebook like that. It's not like I'm sitting down to read an essay.
Yeah. Now, I understand that point, and I guess I notice question marks. So it's very.
Let me say you're the minority.
May well be, and I guess we can swap anecdotes on this kind of stuff all the way through. But I think I think it's in a long line of intriguing questions. I realise it's a negative question, and I've been there's books now saying we ought to be more positive. I guess. Are we in a space now where there's room for a whole bunch of approaches? And I guess this will appeal to some people, not to others. We completely understand that, but I guess we would urge people to have a look and see whether it's going to work for their friends and make up their mind. And this is why it's a useful discussion, to be honest, because you're taking us to the actual fact, but also an in principle discussion about how we should approach these things. I think the attempt on social media is an interesting one, and again, I think you would have far more expertise and all that on that than us. So again, that's why your views taken seriously. I'm deeply committed
to the issue. I mean, I've basically spent my working life thinking about how does the gospel and the media interact, and so I just couldn't believe. I mean, when you research social media, 98% of the people don't click on the thing. It's over 98% don't click on the thing. They just get the image, and so the effect of it is for 98% of the people, it's just like water on a rock, gradually contributing to eroding the idea that Jesus is true. I mean, yes, the people who end up on your website, that tiny percentage that end up on the website, well, I mean, the historical information on the website, I'm highly confident will be brilliant, and probably the best assembled collection of historical information, well produced, all that kind of thing. But for 98% of people, it's an own goal.
Sure. I guess a question to you, though. I mean, part of the idea of the campaign is that you forward a link to a friend. Do those statistics apply to that kind of thing as well, or is there a slightly more intrinsic interest when that happens? So
I think my understanding was that the expectation or the encouragement was that people would share it on social media.
Yeah, right.
And so if you share it on social media, then it comes up in people's social media feeds.
Yeah.
And I think that's not what I want for my non-Christian friends, to have the water on a rock erode. I mean, if you had a positive statement, I want to share a positive statement about Jesus, but I don't want to share the month before Christmas a statement that undermines people's confidence in the resurrection. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the question is, how much of an impact does a question mark make? And so social media companies like Copy Blogger, ProBlogger, a number of other different social media companies actually say if you want a headline that gets click-throughs in terms of generates interest, then you're absolutely right. I mean, some stats say, yeah, as you say, only 2% click-through, others say, 20% click-through, whatever it is, but it's the minority.
Well, the social media marketer that I spoke to in preparation for today said under 2%.
Sure.
Is the industry average. It's the tiny minority.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's not so much about the click-through, it's about what do people see. And so the headline copywriters will say that actually a question is a valid and legitimate way of going about it. And so that's why we at TGCA spoke to other marketers that you recommended as well, and they were confident that this won't do any negative.
I don't know that they were confident.
Well, certainly the one you point us to, we've had a friend that we spoke to in publicity and they thought, yeah, it should be fine, it won't do any damage at all. The question is, in people's minds, is how effective will it be? And so I guess the question can be answered by, let's launch it, let's get it out there, let's make it happen.
Well, let's think negative campaigns for a minute. I think disaster. I'm prepared to acknowledge that sometimes they can work. So we've got, Gossip Girl ran a campaign where they took scandalised reviews of parents, and that made teenagers want to watch the show. Volkswagen Beetle had, it's small and then had a really big NFL player and couldn't fit in, Harley Davidson, completely irresponsible, and advertised riding that motorbike, completely irresponsible. But I can't, so yes, there's a premise that in some context making the small concession can win a hearing, but I can't see it working in the gospel context. I haven't seen it work in any forum in the gospel context. Can you cite another forum where you've thought, well, that's really worked?
Well, certainly in terms of headlines, we often use headlines of the Gospel Coalition Australia to rouse interest, generate interest from both Christians and non-Christians. And often we see that actually works. People get curious, they click on the link, they comment. Curiosity is something that drives us.
So a bait and switch.
Well, not a bait and switch. So I guess when it comes to headlines, for the sake of your listeners, when you're writing a headline, you want to make it not the bait and switch. You don't want to go down that far. But at the same time, you want to make it appealing. You want to make it curiosity inducing. You don't want to make it boring, because at that point, less than 2%.
I'm not arguing for boring. Yeah.
No, I know that. So you're trying to get the middle ground, what will generate the curiosity and get people to click on the link. And at the same time, be completely honest, which we think it is. The Gospel Coalition Council has had a discussion about this. We've talked to marketing friends of yours.
So would any of your council members, because the one I spoke to said he wouldn't, put this as a banner outside their church?
Look,
come on. Would any of them? Yeah.
I think there'd be a number of them that would be quite happy, depending on where they were. But can I just say, social media is a different beast.
Let's invite, I'm sure some of them are watching. Sure. Let's invite them to write in the comments. Let's invite them to do that, because I actually think that would be stupid. There's no way. We've got a very prominent street corner here.
Yep.
There is no way that we would put Jesus, history, or hoax, history's biggest hoax, outside the corner here. Our people would shoot me for it, and the Lord Jesus would think I'd let him down. I'd have shot him in the foot. You wouldn't do it if you were a pastor, would you, Bill?
Well, I've used. I mean, when you say bait and switch, it's not quite bait and switch.
No, I'm talking about.
Yeah, but yeah, a negative thing. Well,
yeah, such a negative thing.
yeah.
I mean, if you want to, it's Easter. We want to say he rose from the dead, not.
But I think that's an interesting question, because I think the context of Easter actually makes the question about the resurrection perhaps more live. And and there will be people that will think this is irrelevant or it's a hoax or whatever. So to actually say we're addressing this question, is not beyond the realms of possibility. I mean, I don't run a church, and so I can't answer for that. But would I try this? I might take a risk on that. Yeah, with your caveats in mind. Because again, it would depend on my context, the area. There's a whole bunch of kind of considerations that come into that question. But I'm not in principle opposed to the use of a question which raises a query which I know people have in their minds.
Okay.
That's all right.
Could I just say as well, Dominic, on the volatile or on the lower attention span area of social media, you just need to be that little bit more provocative perhaps than you would be at the front of your church, where people slow down, they stop at the traffic lights, they see it. That's a completely different context to social media. Social media, people are scrolling past all the time. 2% of people, as you say, click through. We're fine with going that little bit more provocative, not being negative in terms of...
Well, you were being negative. I mean, in that the question...
Yep.
has the negative edge. I mean, you can ask a question with a positive edge, or you can ask a question with a negative edge.
Yep.
What you've done is set the Christian people on the back foot.
Well, again, we're going to argue about the power of a question mark.
Yeah.
Because,
but I mean, the way the question's phrased, and I mean, and the voice of the introduction, she says, "Is this history's biggest hoax?" I mean, it's back foot. I mean, to make me. I've got to start. I mean, one of my friends. No, you keep going.
No. I was just going to say. I think again we're arguing about the place of a question mark and the way that that's read. You may be right. There may be a whole bunch of people that read it one way. Others will be intrigued, read another, want to see what this says. I guess. Again, we want to take seriously what you're saying, but I guess we've got a different view, and it's a take and eat argument. Let's give it a run and see.
Okay, let's talk historicity. Isn't there a better place to start in the current cultural zeitgeist than historicity? There's
all sorts of places that people can start, and we want to encourage everyone to do as much evangelism as much as they can, whenever they can, online and offline. So we don't want to be the people that say this is what you need to do. However, according to the McCrindle research back in 2017, I think it was 26% of people that are open to becoming Christian, non-Christians that are open to becoming Christians, said that miraculous stories are one of the belief blockers for them. And so this wants to engage at least with the evidence of the resurrection to show that there is credibility, that you can actually go and investigate it and find out more for yourself.
I asked our evangelism director on Sunday night and our leader of Introducing God how many questions they'd had on historicity. She furrowed her brow and said, maybe 2 in 5 years. And he said, I can't think of any. I mean, you're dealing with young people all the time. It's not the burning issue at the moment.
Kind of interesting though, because my wife works at a school and they did a survey of questions that their school population had. And was I surprised? I was interested to see that what I understand as some of the very traditional apologetic questions, including historicity, were amongst a good mix of those ones that came up. Now, there were other ones as well. Now, you're talking about the whole relevance, is Christianity good? I think there's a whole range of stuff that needs to be obviously addressed there as well.
Well, I mean, our questions are not historicity. Our questions are, what difference does he make to my life? How relevant is that? But they're not debating whether or not he existed.
No, sure, and neither does this this doesn't debate whether he existed or not. This debate's a very central kind of fact, the resurrection, which I think we'd want to say, if you're going to go anywhere, death on the cross and the resurrection as events that actually happened are there. I mean, I think, the more I think about it when I preach, Dominic, I don't know if you do this, but we live in a world, and this is mainly possibly for Christians, where people are prone to think the Bible's a very helpful therapeutic story. And some of the relevance evangelism may be playing straight into that as a trap. So I've got the little habit now, when I'm talking about the resurrection of Jesus, I'll actually talk about, Saturday morning, the 6th of April, AD 33, just to ground it for people, because I think we're in a danger where history is a foreign country. Now, this is not a debate about history and its importance. I realise that.
I like that. I like that. I find myself, when I'm introducing a new book of the Bible, I'm always putting up a map. I'm wanting
this happens somewhere.
I'm wanting to help people see that it's a real thing that happened in a real place.
Absolutely.
And, as I've shown my photos of Israel, we've definitely had non-Christians who've come to church and say, "Oh, Dominic's been to Capernaum." That is a place. It's a place. It's a real place.
Right.
Now, so there's an advantage in doing that. But I was in a discussion with somebody the other day, and I realised I don't think I've done a historicity of the scriptures, little kind of apologetic talk, as a little kind of cameo moment in a sermon. I think I've done one in 5 years, and I thought, I probably ought to do that sometime, and so I weaved it in. But that I've only felt the need to do it once in the last 5 years is because that's not the question I'm getting. I mean, if people were asking me that question each week, then I would be working to teach on that each week. And so it just feels to me like, well, not only have you gone on a big negative and undermined people's confidence, but undermined people's confidence on a question they're not asking, Arcos.
Look, I think there'll be many non-Christians that are asking the question about the historicity. I'm sure your listeners could give their own anecdotes of conversations they've had about, did Jesus really exist? Is God real? But I guess the point is, we want evangelism as the Gospel Coalition Australia to be happening all across the board. So if you do have...
I'm for that. I just wish you'd done it better.
Well, no, we're actually addressing a segment of the population. As I said, the McCrindle research says 1/4 of the people, 1 in 4 non-Christians that are open to change, have the belief blocker of miraculous stories. And so there's, 25% of how many non-Christians there are out there that are open to change, that would be willing to actually engage and investigate and talk about this.
See, I don't like Alpha, but I just want to acknowledge that the Alpha course, the opening title of it was, the opening session, Christianity Boring, Irrelevant, Untrue. And they've changed it to Jesus more to life, or is there more to life? And so they've moved it from the negative and they've moved it from the debate about the historicity to the relevance.
The relevance question,
actually, I think that's smart, And at the same time, you guys have gone in the opposite direction.
Look, sorry.
No. I was going to say, you're also talking about the starting point to a course. I'm not familiar with Alpha, so I'm assuming it covers a whole range of stuff. This is a kind of a one shot, and you may be saying, well, you've blown your one shot.
Well, for 98%.
Well, and again, statistics, who knows? But I guess we're saying, here's a shot. By all means, have a look at it, see if it's going to work for your people, and take on board this conversation exactly. But at least have a look and see the whole presentation, and and don't just ignore it on the basis of a title. Though a title's really important, and I get your point with social media.
We could have gone and looked at the website, but only 2% of the people will get there. It's the 98% that I'm most worried about.
Look, we've looked at the social media marketing companies, we've talked to the marketer, the council has met, the Richard Chins, Gary Millers, Bill Saliers of the world. We're confident, and we want to say to your listeners that we're confident that it's a good...
You guys, there's so many of you guys who've got PhDs on every aspect of the Bible. You're the cleverest guys in the world in the Bible, but you're not the guys I'd go to for social media advice.
And no one's asking me to go to... I hope no one goes to me for social media advice. But that's, I think, as Arcos pointed out, we have cast the net quite broadly. In terms of younger pastors who are in tune with social media, and they've been... Some of the criticisms come back exactly like you said, and we're weighing all that, and on balance we're saying, let's give it a shot.
How will it work? So How will it happen that my friends get it come up in their feed?
So this Friday night we have the launch, 7:30 on our TGC Australia Facebook page. It's about 25 minutes or so where we have a detail about who made it in terms of we had a professional animator making it. They talk about their process. We have Murray Smith, for example, New Testament lecturer at Christ College, talking about the historicity of Jesus. And then we have, I think, Brianna talking about how it's meant to be used. So very simple. It's just a case of sharing it on your social media feed and seeing what God does with it.
So you're not going to put money into it to advertise it to the people who are fans of Gospel Coalition Australia?
Yeah, no, thank you. The idea is to actually, for Christians to share it on their own personal feeds. We don't want this to go out from Gospel Coalition Australia per se to random non-Christians. We want our Christian audience to share it so that their non-Christian friends online see it and start a conversation with them.
So, I mean, that's very helpful because if you were going to put money into it on the Gospel Coalition Australia page to go to the friends of people who've liked the page, then I would go and unlike the page because I don't want my non-Christian friends to see it. Yeah, but since you're saying it's my choice whether it or not I share it to them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you were seeing it as a resource, right? And part of the Gospel Coalition is to try and resource Christians. It's a we're not saying this is the way you should do it, but here's an opportunity. Here's a resource. Here's something that might work for you. As a lot of the Gospel Coalition stuff is, to be honest, it's resources that Christians may use to find helpful for their own faith or for sharing the faith with others.
What are you going to do differently next time, Arcos?
It depends how the campaign goes, Dominic. So my non-Christian friend, for example, said to me, Arcos, you've got to get it out of the Christian echo chamber. You know what? I'm going to share it on my own personal profile. So we don't know what God's going to do with it. But we are hoping that at the very least, your audience is made up of pastors and ministry leaders. We're hoping at the very least that congregation members from their congregations will share it. Non-Christians will see it, maybe move in terms of their doubts and beliefs around Jesus. And then when the invite comes to an Easter service, they'll be more open to going along to one of your listeners' Easter services. So in terms of next time, we'll see what God does with it, but we certainly hope and pray that many people come along to the launch and share it so we can actually see what effect it has.
Bill?
I mean, it does raise the question, I'm interested in your take on this, whether social media is even an appropriate platform. I mean, this really is an experiment in a new space. And again, I
want you to be in the marketplace. I want you to be in the marketplace.
Yeah. Given everything you've said about the 2%, would you be putting money into a social media campaign? Some of the trend now is towards hospitality, friendship evangelism, and so on. So I really think this is probably trying to break a little bit of new ground or see whether that ground is in fact infertile.
Well, I want you to be in the marketplace. I want you to recognise that, really people just look at the very first the first 10 seconds, and so the first 10 seconds matters, and I mean, I watched this thing, the first 10 seconds just spreads doubts, and doesn't actually answer anything,
I'm going to go the other way, because the first 10 seconds, and again, we're talking opinions and reactions, right here. I think people will be impressed by the simplicity and the beauty of this presentation, And again, I'm not an expert, and I've got my own view and all the rest of it, and clearly I've got a interest as we go. But all that said, it's an intriguing presentation, I think, visually, which I think is important on a visual platform. Now, I think you've got comments about the voice and all the rest of it, but I wonder, and this is what we want to find out, whether the total package is going to encourage people to get beyond 10 seconds. Because the way the line moves and so on, I'll be interested to hear the animator talk on Friday what the concept behind it was. But it's not a movie. It's not a picture of Jesus. It's symbolic. It's graphical. It's kind of interesting. It's dynamic, not static. There's a whole bunch of stuff I think going on. And I'm happy to be proved wrong. Well, not happy to be proved wrong because I don't want.
You want to be proved right. You want me to be wrong.
I don't want to be proved wrong in this. But this is why I'm suggesting at least people have a look at the launch and make up their mind and not just.
So just to say, I think it'll be fine. In terms of if you get onto the website, you'll be amazed. You'll think that's brilliant. If you watch the video through and you're not particularly a social media person, you'll think, that's a good little video. But it's the 98% who don't click, who have we erode again drops of water on a rock. He's a hoax. He's a hoax. He's a hoax.
Yeah, we disagree, Dominic. We think the question marks next to the hoax makes a very obvious difference, as do social media marketing companies. Questions are good headlines.
Well, we'll wait and see.
Well, we keep circling that mulberry bush.
Come along Friday night, 7:30pm Australian Eastern Daylight Time, TGC Australia Facebook page.
My guests on The Pastor's Heart, Arcos Balogh and Bill Salier, and thanks very much for coming in. And we will be back next week, next Tuesday afternoon, and I hope you can join us then.